Thanks for listening to Games by Design. I'm Zach, and I'm joined by Nick
Hi.
and Noah.
Praha.
And today we'll be watching some footage that I had from a few years ago from a game that needs no introduction, Skyrim. And since it needs no introduction, I'm not going to give it one. So I finally got my wife to play Skyrim, and after she'd been playing the game for several hours, she said, "This game is kind of boring." So she's been ignoring like the quests and just hunting, crafting, and exploring and stuff. So that might have something to do with it. But what the part that I think is interesting is that she just doesn't seem to mind too much that it's kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
So, and neither do I. I mean, I've been playing it with her a little bit, and I agree that like it can get really repetitive and kind of boring. But that's also like kind of my favorite way to play the game is doing all that in between boring kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it got me kind of thinking. What kind of games have you guys played with a lot of gameplay that is kind of boring or repetitive, but that you don't mind and kept playing anyway?
For the first one that springs to mind, and it's actually one that you had mentioned earlier before the recording, was Stardew Valley. I started actually by myself. I started my own solo one recently. We've been playing it as a family, but started my own solo one, and I've just been sinking a shocking amount of hours into it. And I was thinking about it as I was playing. I was like, this is, and then you asked this question, and I was like, why is it so easy for me to pick up Stardew Valley and play it for hours on end, despite the fact that, 90% of what I'm doing is tilling, watering, and selling my crops. But I felt progression is a big part of it for me. And a sense of obvious progression. That is something I think Stardew Valley does really well, is that it's slow burning and it takes some time, but like every day, you just have a little bit more money and you have a little bit more space to work with and you have a little bit more crops, and then and it really kind of snowballs. And so even though it is a lot of the same actions every day, the progression itself is so satisfying that it doesn't really matter that it's the same thing.
So it's kind of like it's got like a wider, broader picture that you're thinking about that kind of like lends meaning to the tedious stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
I certainly agree with that. I think that in a game like Minecraft, I'm inclined to spend a lot of time harvesting resources because I know I'll be making permanent structures, permanent improvements to the way I play the game. There's a lot of progression on a large scale. I mean, it's like, why do people go to work to make money, to have things? Like people do a lot of tedious things if it is meaningful in the long run, or if it provides something for you. I mean, Skyrim, I imagine you're probably making money doing those tedious things, or selling potions. Like, right, you're building something up. I think that there's a lot to be said for intrinsic value in a game, right? Like an activity that's just fun in and of itself, certainly. But I don't think that should be the be all end all. I think there's a lot of value in having something larger to contribute to, even if it's on the smaller scale. It's not as moment to moment engaging. Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's like a conflict, I guess. Not a conflict, but like it's immediate fun, immediate gratification versus the more like long-term planning, goal setting, and like a delayed gratification, I guess.
It's interesting watching you play Skyrim and just thinking about this game. I think it's one of the reasons why I'll frequently restart Skyrim, but I hardly ever stick with it, as opposed to a game like Stardew Valley, which I have frequently restarted and I have stuck with for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually one of the issues. I don't want to say it's necessarily Skyrim's issue. It might be my issue with Skyrim as opposed to an inherent game flaw, but I don't. It's like what you were saying with your wife, where like I'm not really drawn to do the big crazy quests and the main story, and I'd rather kind of just go around from town to town and sell what I harvest and do all that stuff. But my biggest issue is that it never expands beyond that. This game was not designed to expand beyond that. If you have a game like Stardew Valley, that's the purpose. The purpose is to get bigger doing these mundane tasks. But with Skyrim, like it really doesn't get any bigger than you and hunting. Like it never gets bigger than that. You can never hunt more than what you can hunt at the beginning of the game. Like it doesn't change, other than, I don't know, maybe you get a little stronger, but it never expands beyond yourself. And I think that's just, for me, I don't know, just I can't stick with it. I just find it boring.
So you're comparing it to like Stardew Valley, where like you start out tilling the ground by hand, and then eventually or watering everything by hand, and then you add like sprinklers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like the more money you make in Stardew, the faster you can kind of snowball
Yeah.
like the growth that you're making and everything, because you can buy more seeds, you can buy more animals, and then you buy more like automated processes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in Skyrim, you don't get any kind of that kind of exponential growth. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. If my reward for the tedium is more tedium, I'm a little less inclined to do it. In Stardew Valley, like, you will always be working. You will never stop working. Even if you automate everything, you always have stuff you're doing. But your reward for the tedium is that you are changing how that process goes, and simplifying it and streamlining it, or complicating it and streamlining it. But in Skyrim, I don't know. It doesn't do that. It doesn't really do that ever.
That's really interesting. And, now that you're saying that, it's kind of making me realize that I'm hitting kind of the glass ceiling of Skyrim, the green glass ceiling of Skyrim. And what I mean by that is that, like, I've been playing a peaceful run, just like mercantile, like trading, buying, selling, making potions and crafting and stuff like that, just because I thought it would be kind of fun to try to see how far I could get doing like no combat, no looting, none of that stuff. And I do love it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's actually more fun to me than doing the adventuring and stuff like that. But I am hitting that point where it's like, okay, like the merchants only have like so much gold. Like you can only like get so rich because there's only so much money in the in-game economy. And that doesn't happen in Stardew. Like in Stardew, you can just like grow as far as I mean, maybe you do hit a ceiling eventually, but when I played it, I felt like it would go on ad infinitum. Like it would never, you could just like juggernaut,
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't think of that. But I do love the idea that there's like a broader sense of meaning and purpose that lends some significance to the tedious stuff that you're doing. I think about games like Valheim that we've played together and had a lot of fun with. State of Decay is another one. We just talked about that one recently.
Yeah.
Animal Crossing is another one. And then Nick, you mentioned Minecraft. I think that in all of these, there's tedium, there's repetitiveness, but I don't mind it as long as there's a sense that like what I'm doing, shoveling dirt or whatever over and over again is leading to something bigger, more permanent, more important. That kind of answers our next question already, which is why did you keep playing these games? The one after that I've got here is like, do you think that the games would have been better if they were like never boring? Like if like it was fun moment to moment and there was never any tedium or anything like that? And if so, like how would you try to accomplish that? Or
I think the only experience I've ever had where a game was never tedious is an incredibly scripted, streamlined thing like Uncharted or The Last of Us, right? Like generally, if there's any amount of player agency, you're gonna do something repetitive. Like you're gonna walk the same road a number of times. I think of Mirror's Edge, the first one, versus Mirror's Edge Catalyst, where the first game is levels. It's all levels. The story progresses linearly. You can go back and replay levels, but basically they're just like racetracks, right? You just try to get through the levels quick and smoothly. Mirror's Edge Catalyst, though, is an open world. And what that means is you return to the same places again and again. There's only so many routes, right? I did the same freaking janky parkour across those balance beams or whatever, like a dozen times at least during my playthrough. By virtue of being a game where I could choose to return to that place, I did the same thing again and again.
That's interesting. That kind of like highlights also like the challenge or the advantages and disadvantages of like scripted versus open world, and or not open world necessarily, but like open-ended, like a lot of freedom. Because like if you're going back, if you have the freedom to choose, you're gonna choose suboptimal things, you're gonna choose inefficient things, you're gonna choose like stuff that doesn't have a ton of momentum to it all the time. But I also like, those are like my favorite games. Like I love the scripted stuff. I definitely do. Like I like the Naughty Dog games, for example. Like all of those are very scripted. Not so much Crash Bandicoot, but even that, but the ones I play over and over and over again are the ones that I kind of jokingly say or to my wife when I'm going to play something is like, I want to play a boring game, and it's something that's not really fun to watch for someone else to watch you doing. Like I like playing Crusader Kings. I like playing, I've been playing Manor Lords lately. Like all of Skyrim is another one of them, actually. At least the way that I play it, because I don't do all the quests and the story and stuff. But those are like the most fun I'm having, But it's like super boring to watch because it's like the game is kind of happening in your head, to a large extent, rather than being right there in the screen for the people around you who might be watching to see as well. So you guys play like Animal Crossing and stuff, right?
Yep.
How is that one representative of this kind of experience, you think, or is it a little bit different in some way? Is it boring most of the time?
It's
That's
repetitive.
It's repetitive for
if
sure.
if it's boring though.
Animal Crossing is this weird thing where like I play it and I'm like, There's nothing else like this game. Sometimes I'm like not even sure if I should call it a game, because it it's like a simulation experience. It's so weird, because it operates on a real life day cycle, and when you go into the game, like there's actually not a ton to do. It's sort of this like, I don't know, like if I boot up Animal Crossing, which I frequently do, and I go to my island, generally what I can do is dig up fossils, fish sometimes, talk to the villagers. Maybe there's an event, like if it's seasonal, and then I go to Crazy Red and see if he's got the paintings that I need, because I'm trying to fill up my museum. And that's generally all that happens. Like it doesn't tend to go beyond that. Obviously, with Animal Crossing New Horizons specifically, so there's a lot of player liberty in regards to decorating, and so that is where most of the time goes. That's like creative energy is into like making your island pretty, and you can completely resculpt it and move buildings around, and it's all sorts of stuff like that. And that is probably where most of the like long-term interest comes from, but it's also really expensive to do that, so you aren't doing it very often. It's pretty, and it's, you tend to save up, do a big thing, save up doing mundane tasks, do another big thing. It's kind of this like, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's a sort of like ebbing and flowing gameplay that's pretty interesting. But yeah, but I still love it. Like I still love it, and and it's very relaxing to play.
It makes me wonder, like, when do you lose interest in it?
Yeah.
Like when does it stop being fun for you? Like is there, and then like maybe connected to that, like how do you end a game that is more open-ended like that? Like should there be an ending? Is there a way to have a good ending in a game like Skyrim, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley? Because they kind of like go on forever, and it kind of defies that traditional like narrative, like I need an ending and I need a satisfying conclusion to the story for it to be interesting and fun. Like what do you guys think about that kind of stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
Nick, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I'm thinking about Tears of the Kingdom right now.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking. I was gonna say Harvest Moon.
Oh yes, actually big fan of that.
Okay, I'll say that real quick. So Harvest Moon,
It's a Wonderful Life.
Wonderful Life, that's right. It's a Wonderful Life. And Harvest Moon, the GameCube one. Spoiler, you die at the end. That's how the game ends. So you play through the game, and it's this Stardew Valley. It's a farming sim. It's one of the first. And
OG.
It's a farming sim, and you do it all. You get married, and you have a kid. Yeah. And then just one day, I've never played it fully, so I don't know if there's like if it's like leads up to this at all, or if it just happens. I think it just sort of happens, but I could be wrong. You just die. Like I don't remember if you fall ill or you get you get hurt farming, but like you're lying in your bed and you're surrounded by your family and your kid and like the people who like you in town, and they're like, oh man, we're gonna miss this guy, and then you like say goodbye, and then you die, and then the game ends, and that's how it ends. And that's how it. I was like, wow, the chutzpah, the balls that this game has to do that. That's insane.
I think of another example. I think of is Sid Meier's Pirates. Where you just the entire game you're getting older, and at some point you have to retire. Like you one of my favorite things is to like be playing that game and to be sword fighting and go, oh shoot, I'm not as quick and spry as I used to be, right? You get slower as you age, which I think is one of, again, the ballsiest things to do in a game, because players want to grow forever. But I think if you kind of mirror the more natural life cycle of, slowing down and kind of deteriorating slowly until the time you ultimately expire or retire, I think that's actually a really compelling thing. And if Skyrim had a clock, this is kind of a crazy idea, but if Skyrim had a clock, a counter, and it was long. It could be long. But that wouldn't work with the game Skyrim is, because truth be told, I think that Skyrim is an adventure game with some systemic elements on the edges. What Bethesda wants you to do is go fight Alduin, go join the Stormcloaks, go, become the Archmage. They want you to do the adventures. And I think that's generally where I feel like Skyrim and I aren't at odds, is when I'm just playing like an adventurer. But if Skyrim were just a fantasy life sim, if Stardew Valley let you die, if your game is about living, there's a way living ends, and it's death. And so I feel like if we're looking for like narrative satisfaction, that's really compelling to me.
That's a really interesting idea to me, because you have games that are about like, here's a story that takes place in a day. The Naughty Dog games, they don't happen in a day, but like Gone Home is an example. Naughty Dog games have an ending. There's a ton of narrative games that all have endings. But if the game is about inhabiting a role, living a life in another world, maybe that's what's missing from a lot of them, is that like in real life, if you want to like go through the experience, the proper experience of living this life, part of that experience is that it changes over time. As you get older, you change, and then it ends because your time on this world ends. You're old, you're sick, you're gonna die. Like that's what happens, and that's a fascinating idea to entertain for this kind of a thing. Definitely doesn't exist in Skyrim. Doesn't, like you said, wouldn't fit, but that's really interesting. It's interesting, and I think you guys are right, it has chutzpah or balls or whatever, because it's like these games are so much about like progression, and like the character, the player invests so much into the character, but then like the game has to be like really serious and really brave to be like, okay, now we're gonna kill you, the story's over, we're gonna take away all that and say you're done now, you know.
It's even more bold because those types of games, I mean, back then when that game came out, you know, there were definitely the farming like game was definitely established at that point still, but like now more than ever, gosh, I feel like every week I get a new article on IGN that's like this cozy farming Stardew like, and there's this sort of like idea that the farming like, which is this, you know, genre that's grown like over the last 10 years particularly, it's one of its biggest like key components is that it's relaxing by nature. And like that is like one of its biggest draws that gets so many people in, is that it's like relaxing and you're able to like do things at a certain pace. And so it's even more bold when you consider that a game that it falls under that genre puts you under a time constraint or puts you under a, you know, a limit of some sort, because I mean, like, if you played Stardew and you knew that, and wow, that wolf just soared.
Lion.
If you played Stardew and you knew at the end of year 5 that you were going to die, you'd be so stressed. You're like, I gotta do everything. I just would be so curious, would be like, what's the way to balance that, you know, in a game like that?
I think an extreme example, taking that to the extreme, would be 1 Hour, One Life.
Oh yeah.
It says, here's a game that's all about crafting stuff, making stuff, building a community, living in a place. You have 1 hour, and then you're dead and you're gone. You'll never meet anybody again. It's so funny though, because my playthroughs of 1 Hour, One Life are so seared into my memory. Like the stuff you do in that hour versus the stuff you do in the 100 hours of Skyrim. Like, you know, it just strikes me as so much more meaningful. Maybe it's because there's a multiplayer element and you're doing stuff for other people, but even they're only going to appreciate it for one hour. But like that arc of baby to adult to old person, you know, is actually so satisfying to play, and I wouldn't mind seeing that in more games. It's funny actually, because the first time I played Skyrim, I did the Omni playthrough, right? I did it all. I fought the war, I killed the dragon, I became the Archmage. I don't think I interacted with the Thieves Guild. I thought they were dumb. But I did like freaking everything else. You know, I turned into a werewolf. I unturned into a werewolf. I did everything. And at the end of it all, I had my huge house in Solitude, and there's the armor that I forged out of the bones of all those dragons, and there's that, you know, like there's the thing I got from killing the Dark Brotherhood and all that, you know. So many things. The Empire was in shambles.
The Empire was in shambles.
but I got to the end of it, and I remember looking at my character, and I was like, I think this guy's ready to just like sit down and live out the rest of his days in peace and solitude. The only way to do that was to shut off the console and never boot the game save up again. So there's no like satisfying way for the game to recognize that you've ended. But it makes me think it'd be as simple as a cutscene, right? And I don't know, like it depends. If there was some event that was reserved for when you end the game, when you choose to end the game, kind of like when you're playing a big open world game and you're like, all right, it's go time, it's final boss time, right? I'm playing Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, and it's like, it's time to go fight the baddie. Part of the sadness of, I think, Tears of the Kingdom especially, without getting into spoilers, part of the sadness of wrapping up a game that you've spent so much time in is swallowed up in this incredibly handcrafted, satisfying, bespoke ending that just says like, well done, you know, you did it. Here's something glorious to remember the game by. Now you can shut off your console and not play again. I haven't played again since I finished Tears of the Kingdom. I love that game, and I often think about all the crazy things I could make, but I had a nice finale. I had something nice to set it down to, and it didn't pay off every, you know, it pays off the story of the game, which it sets up at the beginning, and you definitely spend a lot of time doing other things like making derpy robots and stuff like that, or whatever you want to do. But but it gives you something to attach to at the beginning, and it pays that off at the end. And I just think it's really satisfying.
It's like it's got to acknowledge the life that you've lived. You know, it's like Crusader Kings is one of my favorite games. I've only actually finished it, like gotten all the way to the final end date one time, which was a huge thing, and so much happened, and I was so proud of my dynasty and everything. And then, so spoiler alert for Crusader Kings 3, the way that it ends...
Spoiler alert for history.
The way that it ends is it's like you hit, January 1st, 1453, and it's like, game over. And that's it. It's just like, it's got like a glitchy interface. At least when I did it, it had like a really glitchy interface, and it just kind of like freaked out a little bit. And then I was like, okay, you're done playing. Thanks for playing. Bye. And then I was like, what about like celebrating the hundreds of years of history that I've had? What about like acknowledging all the stuff that my family did? Like, what about acknowledging like, all of the hours and all of the effort that's been put into this? And I think that if you do something like, I haven't finished Tears of the Kingdom, but something like they do where you got like some kind of satisfying conclusion, or like in A Wonderful Life, like you were talking about earlier, it's like, okay, you're dying, and now you get like a chance to like reflect on it, enjoy it, celebrate it, and then say goodbye to it. I mean, it's kind of like the way that's what we do in life, to like kind of like deal with the grief and the sadness of like when people die in real life. Like, we have a funeral, we remember them, we reminisce about them, we talk about things, we reflect on stuff, and it's like, I think that, and if people get the chance to do that before they go, I think that it helps them too, but like, what if games did that more often? Like, I mean, like in story games, they have like, climax, falling action, wrap up the story, that kind of thing. But in a game that's more open, or a strategy game, or a simulation game, if they had that kind of like, they just need to acknowledge everything that's happened up to this point, acknowledge the journey, and then celebrate it, be excited about it, and then say goodbye to it in a satisfying way. That would be really cool, I think. Skyrim doesn't have anything like that, I don't think. Well, no. I don't know. I haven't played the main story, so I don't know.
It's all right.
I keep trying every few years or so. I'm like, maybe I should try that. And
But then they're like, you have to climb the 10,000 steps, and I go, gosh, I don't want to do that.
No, thank you.
I so don't. And I know there's that stupid troll that's always there.
Oh yeah, the troll. Yeah,
I know the only like level locked things in the game. I think like most of the game has like level scaling, but he's just hard as balls no matter what level you are.
The only time he's easy is when you got the full Fusroda, because then you can just thunder destroy him off the mountain. Yeah. I was just thinking while you were talking, Zach, not to derail a little bit. You're saying,
no,
I was just thinking, like, we're gonna have to start like a podcast bingo sheet for our listeners, because I was gonna say start tick the square that says every time that games would be better if they were more like real life, and then tick the square that is every time we say we somehow go from one topic to talking about how it could be implemented in an RPG.
we have a box for complaining about Skyrim.
And a box for every time Nick or I talk about Dark Souls, or I talk about The Last of Us.
Or when I mention Crusader Kings.
Yeah, this would be a good bingo sheet. We could put it in the comments section.
Yeah,
like a text.
Our patrons get a PDF printout of a bingo sheet that you can play while listening to our podcast.
Oh, that's good. You could have a reward for if you get a bingo, you get mentioned in like the...
You get mentioned.
Congratulations to, Big Booty number 4 for getting...
We'll put you in one of our video games.
Oh, that's really funny.
You get a bingo? The first bingo. We'll make a bingo sheet.
That's really funny.
Yeah, that's probably a good kind of way to kind of wrap this up. Any other thoughts you guys have before we kind of wrap this up? This video goes on longer than it's supposed to, so we'll have to cut it here soon. But
yeah, I actually, just before we were talking about this, I was thinking about Elder Scrolls Online, and I watched a video on it. And I played probably 15 minutes of the game, and I said, gosh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to download Elder Scrolls Online and just give it another shot. And so I thought maybe we could do a future video on that. I can record some of my gameplay, and then we can talk about that and see how that relates to the Skyrim experience and the other Elder Scrolls games. Because I don't think any of us have played Elder Scrolls Online.
No, I tried it once, but it was
boring.
Like I played it for 3 minutes.
Not the kind of boring that Skyrim is, where I wanted to keep doing it anyway. Yeah. It was also an MMORPG, and I don't know. I don't know if I missed that boat, if I got left behind, or
we didn't. None of us grew up playing Warcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I really ever want to do that, you know. That's another interesting thing. Those are like play forever kind of games, you know, like those don't have like an ending to them, although they have like stories within them, you know.
Yeah, that'd be worth considering. Well, yeah, when you got like the seasonal thing, like you play the game again for a little while, and then you go back to your life, right? And you actually kind of like that, not gonna lie, like with Destiny, as somebody who never actually even bought any of the DLCs, show up, play the new missions, play the new raids, go, that was fun, that was nice.
It's
almost like you're like
playing for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I do that with Crusader Kings. I'll set it down for like 6 months at a time, and then I'll go back and be like, awesome, I get to play this again for a month, and then I'll set it down for like 6 months, and then I'll play it again for like a month, and I'm like totally okay with that. When I was younger, I was like, no, I gotta be playing this game all the time, you know. But not like that anymore. I like it better this way. But it's almost like a sport sometimes, you know. It's like, oh, it's football season. I'll like watch football for a season, and then it's like it's over, and it's all right, cool, I'm good. There's no story, but there is like okay, who wins? Like, what's the ultimate outcome kind of a thing.
Did that thief just materialize in front of you?
I think he did, yeah.
I'm here from hell.
Yeah,
I want your
crawled
money.
out of the ground.
I'm a thief from hell. Dude, Skyrim is so much like unintentional hilarity.
It's so funny.
So good. The flying wolf is not the first time I've seen that this week. Like, I've just been laughing so hard at things like flying and ragdolling all over the place. Anyway, so this has been Games Design. We should probably wrap it up here, but thank you for listening, and thanks guys for being part of the podcast.
Yeah, always.